Morning. Sorry I couldn't be with you in person. I'm Ray Jones. I'm Professor of Health Informatics, Digital Health really, in the School of Nursing and Midwifery at the University of Plymouth. And Frazer and Judith had asked me to do a short presentation here to get the discussion going about innovation and research and digital, and how maybe this might be relevant for the Nightingale Challenge. Just in passing, it's interesting that the Nursing Times managed to get a bit of ethnic diversity, but no male nurses in their picture. Anyway, I'm not even a nurse. I'm just an honorary nurse, having been in Plymouth now for 18 years. My background is in public health and informatics. My career has always focused on innovation and research, ways of changing practice using digital. So I've always done applied research, and it's always been interdisciplinary. So I've worked with nurses, midwives, medics, engineers, computer scientists, all sorts. So just to kick off, I'll give a bit of personal background, partly for Frazer, because he wanted to have a good laugh at some of old videos of me. I started in clinical research and health informatics in 1978 when I worked for a year with Alan Rector, who was developing one of the first clinical record systems in general practice in Nottingham. But the main chunk of my work and what was the basis of my PhD was in diabetes. So back in the mists of time, 1979, when hospital records looked like this and I looked like that, I started working for Tony Headley, who was in public health, and Robert Tattersall, who was a diabetes consultant. So using the technologies of the time, the hospital computer took up a whole room, I devised a system of data collection and computer printed records and prompts that included prompts for missing data. The computer printed up a summary record that went in the hospital notes. It was sent to the GP and was given to patients. The system I developed lasted for 20 years. During that time, some 10,000 patients with diabetes in Nottingham were given a copy of their record. That's rather depressing to see the rather slow pace of change across the NHS towards routine access of patients to their own records. In 1983, Tony Headley became Professor of Public Health in Glasgow and appointed me as lecturer in Health Informatics. That was one of the two first posts with that title in the UK. Technology, of course, was moving on, and in 1984, it seemed clear to me that we could be giving patients direct access to the computers with clinical records and explaining that clinical record. So I applied to the Scottish Home and Health Department. I was rejected. But from the comments I got, it was clear that I had to persuade funders that patients could actually use computers. It sounds silly now, but that's how it was. So I took a step sideways, and rather than try to do everything in one go, I tried to get funding first for a health kiosk, not at that stage linked to the medical record. And I tried to get funding from banks and corporations, and I got rejected. And after about 30 failed applications, I went back to the Scottish office and eventually did get some funding.
Good evening. Detectives mingled
on the sighting of Scotland's Eurofreight terminal, on which thousands of jobs depend, has been...
A pioneering health check scheme has been launched in Clydebank. Developed by Glasgow University and funded by the Scottish Health Department, 10 HealthPoint machines have been installed in the area. It's hoped the touch-screen computers will encourage more people to ask questions about their general health. And if successful, the scheme could be extended throughout Scotland, as Alan Fisher reports.
For years, health experts have been trying to convince Scots to adopt a healthier lifestyle. With one of the highest rates of heart disease in Europe and a growing number of people being struck down by strokes, the reputation of the sick man of Europe seems well deserved. Now, a new computer system hopes to get the better health message across to the public in a more accessible way. The HealthPoint scheme has been pioneered by Glasgow University with £50,000 in funding from the Scottish Health Department. The computer has been installed in 10 locations around Clydebank, including a pub, the local post office and the health centre. People can get advice on a wide range of medical problems by simply touching the screen. It carries practical information on smoking, drinking, stress and sexual matters, and even how to prepare for holidays abroad.
We're hoping to meet the consumer demand for more health information. People want more information, perhaps about common conditions. They want to know how they can treat themselves safely on certain things. Perhaps have addresses, self-help groups for certain things. So we're just giving people the sort of information that we think they want.
It's very good actually. I work in a hospital myself, you know. Just a lowly porter, but I work in a hospital.
Do you think people will...
Nos parecía una experiencia interesante.
Tiene más o menos una lista alfabética de temas y podemos añadir más temas o quitar temas que no son apropiados para algunos sitios.
Así es, y así funciona Infosalud. Se trata de un proyecto de investigación fruto del acuerdo entre el profesor Jones de la Universidad de Glasgow, en Escocia, y del doctor Luis Eric Clavería, de la Unidad de Investigación del Hospital General de Segovia. Tras analizar los resultados, tanto entre los profesionales como entre los enfermos y sus familias, ir al médico. A través de esta máquina Infosalud, los segovianos podrán conocer mejor temas relacionados justamente con eso, con su salud.
So HealthPoint had a bit of a life of its own, and we had interest from IBM, and they passed us on to one of their suppliers, and we were able to sell them mainly in Scotland, but also some south of the border. And during this period, I was able also to return to the idea of giving patients access to their own record with explanation, and was able to now get funding from the Scottish Office, EPSRC, ESRC, MRC, and elsewhere for a series of randomised controlled trials, including trials in cancer, schizophrenia, and for those of you old enough to remember Taggart and...
You can't sit at peace. You can't stop worrying. You can't relax for a minute. Your sleeping's a way to pot. A lot of things are happening to your body for no good reason. You're avoiding doing things or going places. Your self-confidence is going down the tube. What are we talking about here?
Being an academic on a fixed term contract, trying to get funding, ethics permission and keeping projects running when you've got difficulties with the recruitment. But anyway, it was actually the introduction from a multimedia cognitive behavioural therapy program for stress that we used in one of the randomised controlled trials. Anyway, at the end of 2001, I packed our bags and came down to take my current post in Plymouth. But I was Director of Research for the Institute of Health Studies, then Associate Dean for Research. So as well as trying to keep this sort of public health concern of digital health inequalities and patient access, I needed to try to build the infrastructure for research in nursing. And that meant trying to take advantage of the difficulties. How can we involve students? How do we address rurality and the lack of time to do research?
Good afternoon and welcome to another Institute of Health Studies satellite seminar. We're broadcasting from the University of Plymouth. In the studio today we're very pleased to welcome Bob Gann. Bob will be a very well-known figure to many of you. He's Director of NHS Direct Online, about which he's going to speak today.
So of course alongside the main aim that I've been trying to work on, which is sort of patient involvement, patient empowerment, digital and everything, you have to get involved with supporting other research projects. As the Associate Dean for Research, I was a Professor in the School of Nursing and Midwifery. I've been involved in everything from foot and mouth disease in Dumfries and Galloway through to complementary therapies in the Penny Bronze Centre in Bristol. And in fact, here I am in the Penny Bronze Centre talking to the Duke of Cornwall shortly after the Queen first tweeted. These networking opportunities are really quite good. So you start off with the conversation that you're having about what they're interested in, but you can then maybe bring it around to discuss some of the other opportunities. And so on to the opportunities available to you now if you're looking for other things to do, exciting things to do in digital. Cornwall is the place to be. So we've had a project, if you didn't know about it before, called EPIC, There's a video coming up in a minute, and we've now got funding for EPIC 2. So if you're interested in this, do get in touch. But we've got a few videos now to tell you a bit more about it.
Hi, we are EPIC, e-health productivity and innovation in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. We are trying to improve health and well-being in Cornwall through the use of digital technologies and to build the e-health sector. That is, to help small companies get established with new digital care products. What do we mean by digital technologies? Well, everything from websites to apps to wearable tech to assistive technology to telepresence, virtual reality and robotics. Unfortunately, developing IT systems for the health service has a bad history of trying to drop systems in that fail because they were not developed in close partnership with patient needs and the experiences and working practices of nurses and doctors who use them. So we need to take a bottom-up approach to find out what the doctors, nurses, patients, carers and other health and social care professionals see as the problem.
I've come today because it was really interesting and exciting, the sort of technology that's being implemented into the workplace and also helping with the environment of social care. The opportunities for engaging with drone technology, virtual reality, I mean, it's just absolutely fascinating.
We don't have a local doctor's surgery in our village, and a lot of the elderly people, particularly that can't drive any longer, have to get on a bus and travel to nearby towns or villages to get to their GPs. They're used to going to our local Methodist chapel to access post office services, mobile library services, so why can't there be a mobile GP's practice where that system's held, that they could log in and speak to their GPs or practice nurse in the same way?
But often one of the things I find is that patients haven't got any access to either local facilities to continue with their exercises or to be able to have some support and motivation. And I personally feel that current IT technology could be a huge component of that, either through video playback, supportive phone calls on Skype or something similar, and also a way that they can monitor their progress and that I can as well.
Probably the key challenge is workload. We've got an ever-increasing demand for our services, whether they be doctors, nurses, phone calls, receptionists, and we don't really have the resources to match that. So our staff are having to work harder and harder and harder, and it's becoming more difficult to access the services. So I'd say really workload is the main challenge for us.
So we have an issue that are coming up where we're having an ageing population, a increasingly dispersed population with the actual health services themselves in those rural areas contracting. So the distance between an individual and their healthcare will be becoming greater.
So the key issue for us, certainly within our service and within Cornwall Foundation Trust, is to look at how we might be able to develop the self-management approach for patients with long-term conditions. There seems to be a lot of gaps in the knowledge and the advice and the way forward for these patients.
But for me, a lot of it is around independence. So being able to go into a supermarket and purchase my own shopping, that would be really remarkable. So if there was some kind of system, maybe an electronic card or something that interacts with the shelves almost, so it can tell you if you've got with the baked beans or the pasta, but it could make a huge difference and create more independence.
Currently we employ a full-time activities coordinator, but because most of our residents either have a hearing loss or a sight loss or a short-term memory loss, she has to spend an awful lot of time one-to-one. We're very keen on Pepper, the robot. We think there might be something there.
When our residents become acutely ill, sometimes the only option is for them to go into hospital. I'd like an IT solution that could actually connect us with the hospital so that we can actually manage their acute episode in our care home.
So my real interest here is in finding technologies that can help people to manage their own mental health and well-being. And that might be as simple as an interactive application, an app that maybe helps them through certain processes but might help them through certain experiences as well, for example, relaxation. But today I've also seen some virtual reality solutions that might help to deepen those experiences where that's relevant.
So using an app that actually you can feed in your kind of health data or your lifestyle data, which then you can see how the picture of what you're going to look like or your child's going to look like changes.
Our group today talked about developing an app to improve communication, to enable patients to access aspects of the records very easily and to make requests for appointments or book appointments or otherwise access healthcare through the app and through their phone, much as in the way people routinely access their banks through
Yeah, I think she's lovely.
Yeah?
And while robots aren't traditionally cuddly, these offer comfort to people in care homes who may miss the real pets they once owned.
Kind of interacting with the seal can reduce agitation, reduce depression, reduce loneliness, create a more adaptive response to stress. So they've tested with cortisol and blood pressure and this kind of thing, and they found that generally interacting with the seal is really beneficial for well-being. We found it really nice to see people actually interacting with our robots and just really enjoying that interaction because they don't get to see live animals as much as they'd like to.
It's hoped these pets can help reduce agitation in people who have dementia and reduce the amount of medication they need. And new ones are being developed specifically for care homes. There are many ways in which robotics is changing healthcare, improving precision and speed and helping us to stay well. The technology is developing fast, so their use is likely to increase in years to come. Jenny Walrand, BBC Spotlight.
I think this one's collapsed.
That's better. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Hayley Blake from Travan Nursing Home in Falmouth, part of the Cornwall Care Group. We've been working with Epic in regard to the Amazon Echo project, and I'm here to feedback about the information on what we've collated and how our residents have used the Echo. We have used it in many different ways. We've got clients who have got interest that we've been able to ignite using the Echo. For instance, we have a gentleman who's really interested in cricket, so we're able to ask Alexa to give us some cricket facts and talk about different cricketers, and we've used the screen as well to show pictures of the cricketers, which he really enjoys, and he recognises some, which is great. We've also used it in baking to be able to ask Alexa to give us any baking recipes people might have used as children or in their past, which is a nice reminiscent tool as well. And we've also used it for our poetry and writing and reading clubs as well, so that if maybe a client mentions a piece of poetry we've not possibly heard of, we can recite part of the poetry to Alexa and she will recognise the poet and also the name of the poem. So that's been amazing and really useful. It's also obviously really good for engaging any form of singing. We've used it to support our hymn clubs on a Sunday, so by putting on different hymns and engaging clients in singing. We've used it for sensory experiences, so to play wave noises, and obviously to assist with our sensory experiences for some of our clients who are towards their end of their life. There's so many different uses for Alexa, and we would really recommend it to any care home in engaging technology for residents.
So just to finish, and I'm sorry if I've rambled on a bit too long, but my interpretation of what Frazer and Judith wanted was to give a sort of case study, if you like, for people interested in the Nightingale leadership scheme. So to finish, I'll give you my tuppence worth, my 2 Ps, and one is persistence. I've tried to be persistent, to keep coming back to the same sort of approach and aims. In my case, it was about accessibility, involvement of patients, and so on. And even though the technological environment in which I was working changed considerably, the same might apply to you. Earlier in this video, I told you how I made loads of applications for research funding that were rejected, and that continued throughout my career. It's annoying, depressing, but you've just got to keep sort of trying again. Perhaps a different route, change things slightly, find another champion of your idea to work alongside, network, and so on. And that brings me to my other P, and that's about people. Organisations change all the time, and I have no memory. So although your job title may suggest it, it's not really organisations you lead, it's people. And people may remember. It's a relay. So my PhD supervisor was Tony Headley. He introduced me to patient health records. He mentored me in writing decent English in publications. And now I'm trying to pass that baton on to some of my great PhD students, nursing students and research colleagues. So with a bit of luck, you'll get where you want to be too. And if anybody wants to contact me, here is my email. Thank you. Bye.